everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. I feel like I've been away forever, but I'm finally back. I'm sure you've all enjoyed the episodes while I've been away. Maybe you don't want to hear me back, I don't know, but hopefully you do. My name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host for this one. Scott and Joris are still here. They've been holding a fort while I've been away. Guys, it's great to be back with you again.
Well, what do you know? The full trident is back together. Or is it? I mean, is that an AI simulation, Joris? It's a very good impression of our Ben. What do you reckon?
Well, I'll still vote for AI, I think. But I'm glad to have a third person or something here in the room again.
Well, if it's AI, we might never know.
Yeah. Who knows? I think I'm legit. I think I'm real. I'm sure there's a test you can do, aren't you? You have to ask them if they're a human or something, and then they struggle to answer. But we're probably not far from AI-generated podcasts, are we, guys? I'm sure there's a couple out there. But that'd be a bit daft. You want all the mistakes and the cock-ups and stuff. It's way more fun. Speaking of mistakes and cock-ups, there are plenty of those in the Belgian Pro League this week. Let's quickly run through the results. One sacking, a couple of weird managerial situations that we'll definitely get into as well. First off, we had Standard Liège against Union on Friday. The least surprising result of the whole season, because that one finished 0-0. Beerschot in what everyone thought was a must-win game, but apparently there aren't any must-win games for a certain Dutchman in charge at the moment because of, other issues. They lost 3-0 to St. Truden. Antwerp beat Westerlo 2-1. Anderlecht under new temporary management drew 0-0 with Charleroi. Club Brugge lost 4-2 to Ghent. Mechelen beat Cercle 2-0. Genk celebrated someone's 300th appearance with a 4-0 win over Dender. And Leuven and Kortrijk played out a 1-1 draw. Guys, let's first go to that game in Liège at Friday night. It was just the least surprising result, wasn't it, of the whole entire weekend? And not much to really say apart from kind of like, Union had loads of chances, couldn't score. Standard didn't really have many chances, but obviously couldn't score either. You just look at their numbers and it's just ridiculous, isn't it? They've only conceded 3 goals all season. They've got the best defence, but it doesn't feel like they should have the best defence, does it? Like when you watch it, you're like, how has this team got the best defence? Do you think it's just Apollo just being like incredible in goal, or is it just like teams just seem to lose their cool against Standard because they're like, it's fine, we'll make another chance in a bit? Very, very confusing. For Union, it's just the chatter is coming out about who's going to score the goals, and this kind of performance doesn't really help, does it? It kind of just reiterates the point that the guys that were doing it for them last year aren't there, and they are really being missed.
Well, there's not too much to say about this game, which tells its own story, I think, but it is the first time since 1970 that Union have failed to score in 4 consecutive games. Now, for 3 seasons running now, they've been setting records that are the opposite of that, with kind of similar dates. But that's a negative stat that puts this in kind of context and tells us everything we need to know about what their main issues at the moment. They kind of dominated the game in a way. Pocognoli was saying this afterwards, literally that. He said, I felt we dominated but just couldn't score. So, telling us what we already know. He went further though. He did say, I'm convinced we're on the right track. So, for him, it's just keep working and kind of work harder. So, not a lot to say about the game, but Burgess should have been off, of course, which, has been confirmed now, much to everyone's frustration and irritation. We knew it at the time, but now the referees in the review have kind of confirmed that as well. Very odd. I actually thought, as good as it was to see Burgess back, he didn't look completely fit, which isn't surprising to me. He looked like he was toiling a little bit. They probably didn't help him by not hooking him earlier. I think they probably should have done that to kind of do him a favour, more to ease him back in than anything else. But there's a little bit of pressure on, of course, isn't there? Because they're not scoring.
Yeah, how was that not even called a foul? I would even understand. No, I would not necessarily understand that it would not be a red card anyways, but just not even a foul. Does not make any sense, as has been confirmed as well. So that's a strange one. He got away with one there. The non-scoring streak continues. That's already been talked about a lot by both you guys and everywhere else. Standard 4 goals, worst attack of the league as well. Still, they're doing quite alright. Thanks indeed to Apple in this game again, having a good game. but not without giving the fans a scare either. So yeah, and that has happened as well. Like he's gone away with a few ones as well. He's generally been really good, or definitely, yeah, really good, but has some cock-ups every game, it seems, and so far none of them really have been punished. So the main question is it sustainable? Is it? They really need to score some goals at some point. It seemed last week they doubled their total that they were on the right track, but this week it was back to square one. The most predictable outcome of this game, I think, was indeed the 0-0.
Yeah, if Polo's like, because part of me's like, at the moment he's one of the kind of like best performing goalkeepers in the league, but then you watch him and you're like, this guy he makes some incredible saves, and then he'll come for a corner and just do something bizarre, or like the incident in this game where he's kind of like playing out from the back and it almost like rebounds off one of the Union strikers and doesn't go in. And you feel like for Union that probably goes in last year, doesn't it? Like hits Amora and goes in or something. And time will obviously tell on this point, but I think it's worth thinking like at some point, is the kind of recruitment, the way they recruit, not going to work? And is it this season that finally it's just too much of an ask to replace Nielsen, Amura and Puertas all in one kind of season and one campaign? Because I don't feel like they had the Puertas replacement lined up like they had in terms of the Tuma replacement and that. And I don't think the strikers, it's kind of been like this anyway, hasn't it? Where they haven't had the replacement lined up, they'll just go buy them. But I feel like, yeah, maybe in the midfield. And Burgess is the thing I find about Burgess that's quite funny is he's the least likely suspect to be like the referee's like favourite kind of player that always gets away with it. Because you watch him and you think he's the exact player that you think referees would hate and always be willing to send off and book. But for some reason, he's the one that never seems to get in any sort of trouble, which, I don't know. I love Christian Burgess. I just find him very entertaining to watch because of that kind of the way he plays slightly recklessly and kind of on the fringes. And it's one of those things that if he was playing against my team, I'd absolutely despise him. But because I'm neutral in these situations, I kind of quite enjoy it. Speaking of, for the neutrals, I was absolutely buzzing to watch Beerschot versus St. Trude. And I know that people who have listened to this podcast for a while know that I absolutely love when you get these two teams at the bottom going up against each other. And Beerschot, I think they started all right in this game with Timo Verlinden. Like he did a couple of really decent runs, and you're like, okay, he's on it today. He's really on it. And then 10 minutes later, he's injured and off. And I was like, well, that's it. That's them done. Like without him, I just feel like there's nothing going for them. So easy for St. Trude. And after that, I felt just Beerschot, they just look like they got nothing really cohesively going forward or anything. The fact that Shinton had to make so many saves and again had one of the better goalkeeping performances that we saw this weekend, even with a couple of mistakes. But yeah, I like the look of Bilal Brahimi as well. I said that to you guys. I like his kind of directness in that midfield area for St. Truden. I feel like that really complements the likes of Bertuccini and Sarisalaram. I know that Bertuccini is going to get really rattled with him because he doesn't pass him the ball. You could already see that coming. But I don't know if you guys feel this as well, but I feel a little bit less concerned with them now. I feel a little bit more kind of comfortable in that they could be all right. I'm not as much like they're definitely going down like we were a couple of weeks ago. But Beerschot, I guess we should probably tell people who haven't kind of seen the reports that came out very recently. Basically, Dirk Kuyt is very unlikely to be sacked anytime soon because the man has a clause in his contract, which is if he's sacked before the end of his contract, he gets paid to the last cent up till the end of that deal. So his deal runs until 2026. So you're paying almost 2 years worth of a contract just to sack the guy. The story basically said it looks like the owner, the guy that owns Sheffield United as well, I can't quite remember his name, one of the Saudi princes, was like instrumental in convincing the guy Dirk Kuyt to stay. And you're just like, you've clearly, the lack of kind of football direction that they had, like you didn't know who was making the decisions, who was in charge, has clearly played a massive role in him being given this ridiculous contract where they're going into that game against Antwerp next week, guys, where it's just, he probably shouldn't be there. They should have someone else. The fans are invading the dressing room and the press conference, and we know what that fan base can be like when they get a little bit ratty. They can, a stadium band's never that far away for those guys, is it? But another awful, awful performance defensively for them, wasn't it, guys? It's just, I just don't see how they're going to get out of this.
Well, the contractual situation that Ben was just talking about there is even worse because it's not just Dirk who is due to be paid to the last cent. The entire coaching staff have the same clause. So it's going to be incredibly expensive to get rid of anybody. So if you're wondering why he's still there, that explains that in itself. Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about this over the last few weeks. Yet again, they concede an early goal. And in fact, they've conceded 20 now. I checked today, 7 of those 20, so not far off half of them, have come in the opening 20 minutes of games. And in some of those games, they've conceded twice as well. So they've got a pattern of starting really, really poorly. And, when you chase a game, you're always going to have a problem. The defensively, they're really weak as well. They're really soft. Nobody wants to take responsibility there. There's not really enough depth in the squad. Or enough quality. There's the whole issue of, is there enough experience in there for this level as well? For me, Ewan Henderson, who everybody knows I'm a fan of, is one of the few players in there who's actually contributing something positive at the moment, other than Verlinden, who now looks to be gone for about 6 weeks with his muscle tear. Ewan Henderson's one of the few that's working quite hard and trying to make some things happen. He had 2 or 3 line-breaking passes into the final third this weekend. He had a couple of decent pops at goal himself, one of which was not too far away. So he's trying really hard to make something happen, but obviously he can't do it on his own. I think the owners, there's a disconnect there. Obviously, the owners aren't on the ground nearly enough, if at all, to be really blunt about it. So do they really know what's going on? There's been a lot of change at the club over the summer. They lost a lot of time as well, didn't they, guys, because of the changes. Jorge Caspregi, the technical director, he left. He went to Leuven. The CEO joined him. 2 kind of fairly instrumental figures in getting them promoted in the first place. And the players that they've brought in it's been a bit chaotic. And they've not been recruiting smartly. So the whole question of does anybody really know what they're doing at the moment? I suppose is kind of applicable. You certainly don't feel like that when you bear in mind that contractual situation at all. And the worrying thing for me watching this was me being a body language man, as regulars will know as well. I was watching Dirk and he didn't look too bothered at all. He looked mildly frustrated at worst, is what I would say. He didn't look like a man who thought he was going to get sacked. That's because he's not imminently going to. But the interesting thing was during the water breaks, Felix Mazu had his side over and was very communicative with him. He was right in there. The Beerschot boys weren't particularly even talking to each other when they were having a drink. Never mind Dirk Kuyt in there issuing instructions. There was a disconnect even at that point as well. So there's just a lot of really awful signs coming out of there. They've got the Antwerp derby next weekend and it could get even uglier. Watch out for conceding an early goal, everybody, because that generally is what happens to them these days. So, that's something obviously to watch out for. Dirk Kuyt did say after the game, and I thought, really? You want to say this? He said, we're not getting any luck at the moment. If he's relying on luck to get them out of this, it's going to be painful. His counterpart on the other hand, and Felix Mazu, is actually starting to have quite a good time already. He said, I'm actually really enjoying working with the new boys. They're responding. I'm seeing them making less mistakes, and I think we're making progress. And also singled out Brahimi as well as being somebody kind of worthy of praise, who actually had a very decent game again. So I think the St. Truden boys are responding to the new man.
It looks like it's 2 wins out of 2 games, so can't do much better than that, for sure. And the set piece is making quite some difference as well in this game, specifically, scoring on them. And and with these 2 wins already moving up the table as well, not for high enough yet, but indeed gaining some positions close to safety now. If you would extrapolate it all to the end of the season, which we are very far off yet, of course, but I'm still not feeling the long-term feelings I seem to have. I'm not sure yet. I'll sit on the fence a little bit still, with a bit of a new manager bounce maybe. That at some point will wear off, but how bad will it be? Again, is a question, of course. Also considering Kortrijk and Cercle Brugge, I would think they have enough quality in them to beat them on the longer run, but who knows? And they did get a few good wins here, and much needed wins, of course, as well. Yeah, and for Beerschot, you guys said it again, 20 goals conceded. Verlinde out for close to 2 months, probably at least 7 losses in a row. That's, they're probably going to be starting to get close to like the worst start ever. I think they were 3 seasons ago when they were lost in the Pro League. They might struggle to get a better points haul in there, and that was not a good one anyway. Already 9 points of safety, if you consider that out of the relegation playoff zone. Otherwise, still 7 if you just consider the 2 last places. It's really looking dire, and we can only hope for them that Dirk Kuyt and his men are really cheap and they are on wages of €10, so that they can actually still sack them. But I mean, he doesn't have a big name or anything, so I'm sure he's going for such a low salary.
I think in the article I read, he has tripled his salary since last year. So, yeah, what an absolute mess. And like, whatever you think of him as a head coach or something, it's not part of it. It's probably not even completely his fault, is it? Like, that's the thing. The recruitment's been so bad. You'd have to get someone in that can somehow drag that team to play way better than the level that they probably can reach. And it's just, I don't know. I feel like they're already in the realms of, let's try and keep the distance between the teams within that bottom 4 as close as possible and try and spring a Kortrijk at the end of the season, because it's looking pretty dire. It really is. And I'll come to a couple of teams that I think later will join them. I think Standard are due to kind of drop down. Like we said, you asked the question, yours, is it sustainable? And I feel like they're going to be in and around there. I can't see how they won't be in and around there with their kind of record and stuff. But there's a couple of other teams that will probably be in there as well. One of those might be Westerlo, guys. They've really, since that great start to the season, they've just kind of been really inconsistent. Can't find a win at the moment. Got done twice by Toby Alderweireld, and Frigan missing a penalty and then scoring a really nice goal. It is kind of sums up his what we've seen from him so far, doesn't it? Where we've seen these flashes of quality, these flashes of a really good player, and then other moments where you're like, is he a really good player? Is he good enough for the level? Just don't know yet. It's kind of really still undecided. I feel like we've probably raised this so many times, and we kind of spoke about it off air when it happened. How a side with the youngest average age can have a man that's 36 so past his best in between the sticks, who, as Joris pointed out, literally can't jump. Like, that final goal for Alderweireld, like, at first I was like, that's a great header. Then you watch it again and it's like, if you had a goalkeeper that could jump, he probably saves that. But the man can't jump anymore. And I'm sure, like, with Sinan, he has been a good goalkeeper in this league. Like, don't want to kind of rag on him or anything like that. But at some point, you have to admit, like, we need to move on and change goalkeeper. And then on the only side, we've spoken about like a couple of other teams that need to do this. But surely, Scott, come January, they need to be looking for another goalkeeper, like a young goalkeeper, not even a young goalkeeper, just someone in their mid-20s would do, wouldn't it? Because it's just getting a little bit ridiculous that there was like a third goal as well that went in, and a player ran in front of him, but he still kind of did not look assured when the ball went in. So it just feels like a really obvious area that they could improve, that could change things like this from happening, where they're turning those draws into wins and kind of not losing games like this.
Yeah, I think he does expose them a little bit now, increasingly so, and he is definitely a weak link. They've also got a 36-year-old centre-half featuring regularly for them as well, so there's a couple of oddities in what is generally a very young squad, and a squad that's actually doing quite well, really. The results have dropped off a little bit for them, but performances actually haven't been too bad at all still. So maybe it's that case of, just kind of overachieving in those opening weeks a little bit with the results as well. But the performances are still mostly holding up. I mean, Syed Manesh, I thought, was really good again this week. I mean, he's generally been excellent. I was talking a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I think I've mentioned it twice that there are 3 or 4 regular starters there who've really been performing at quite a high level in the opening couple of months of the season. Syed Manesh is one of them, in terms of the outputs, and he's still there or thereabouts. He's having up to now a good season. I think 3 goals, 2 assists, and 8. He's contributing a lot, and his work rate's very good as well. But yeah, it was very much the Toby Alderweireld show. He's actually, interestingly, that was only, I think, the 3rd time, in his career that he's scored twice in a game. And all 3 times it's happened as an Antwerp player as well. So he was enjoying talking about that a little bit afterwards, which I thought was quite an interesting stat. I missed that one until Toby pointed that out. But yeah, it was a VAR heavy game, this one as well. And thankfully, a VAR heavy game in which none of the decisions came particularly to bear in a way that we were all aghast about. So I suppose that's a positive. Westerlo will be quite disappointed, I think, not to have at least got away with that with a point, and to lose it in the manner that they did, as Ben was saying, last gasp with a header which. Yeah, it was a great header, but I agree with Ben. I think a goalkeeper who's got a few more inches on him and who doesn't need to use a trampoline to get off the ground probably gets a fingertip to that. Sorry about that, Sinan, but it's just the way it is. We've had a look at it all now from a few angles, and I'm pretty convinced that, that's totally savable despite the header. Toby Alderweireld's already talking about the big Antwerp derby next week. He's already psyched for that, and he's still got a few days before they get onto the pitch. Westerlo, they'll continue. They'll take it on the chin. They've got games coming up where I think they'll see more points. They've got Standard away and Beerschot at home, both winnable for them. Antwerp obviously have got the derby, which they'll be looking forward to. Then they've got Cercle away and Leuven away, so they will see points on the horizon for them too. So yeah. On to the next round of fixtures for both of these two.
I agree. Leicester still was playing well, so nothing to be too worried about yet. Of course, his streak has to stop at some point. Only 2 points out of the last 5. That's clearly not enough. Luckily, they had some buffer from before. So it's not too late to turn that around. And so far, indeed, not to worry about the level of play. But about the goalkeeper, yep. Indeed, once he got lucky, even with one of the disallowed goals, where he also made a mistake. But luckily for him, I believe it was Kerk was running in front of him in offside position, making that goal not count. But yeah, still that already didn't look great. Then that header again. I don't like to mention it too often, but Alderweireld scoring in the dying seconds of the game. We've seen it before. Already second penalty save of the season for Lammers, though, as well. I want to give him a shout. Of course, he caused this one himself, so this time it was making up for his own mistake. But he did that. He did well there. Only 8 games in, already 2 penalties saved. That's definitely something that deserves this shout out as well, to give some goalkeeper at least something positive to talk about and think about after this game. Anything else? Not really, I guess. So I think we can move on to the next game, another exciting full of goals.
Yeah, we can probably go through this one quite quickly as well. Well, I guess we can just change what the conversation's about, I guess, when it comes to Anderlecht, can't we? I feel it's something we have spoken about before, but we can kind of dive into it a little bit more now that it's finally happened. During the week, they obviously lost 2-0 to Genk at home. That was the end of Brian Riemer. Not a great image where you've got kind of the sporting director and the senior players all chatting in the bench, is it? And then a couple of days later, the manager's been sacked. So whether that was the conversation that was taking place, I highly doubt they had that conversation at that point. Do you know what I mean? I can't imagine they'd do it on the bench and talk about, we're going to get rid of him. But it doesn't look good when that happens. So Brian Riemer's gone. From the outside, it'd probably be quite confusing, wouldn't it? First defeat of the season, he's been sacked. You'd be like, what's going on? But read between the lines, it's kind of quite obvious as to why performances haven't been great. He's been taking the blame for that. Is that really his fault, though? As we saw from this performance, it wasn't a great performance. Is it someone else's fault for not putting a squad together that's good enough for him to get the performances out of? I don't know. Is it also unfair because he's finally got a couple of players together and now he's the time to kind of bed that in, but he's gone before it even happens? I always felt he was never kind of the right man for Anderlecht, not in terms of like kind of anything to do with him as like his qualities or anything like that, but I just feel like he wasn't what Anderlecht want as a head coach, and I feel like that was never he was never kind of always playing on borrowed time in that sense. Like he wasn't the kind of the suave, flashy sort of guy, or like the company, like the favourite son sort of thing. Like it was always going to be quite difficult, and I just don't feel the fans ever really kind of gelled or like kind of warmed to him as a head coach. And I think you kind of felt that by the end. And I feel like, yeah, the kind of all attention now turns to Mr. Fredberg. I feel like the fans kind of frustration will be sat on him now. So it's kind of, yeah, he's definitely under pressure. Was this a decision made to release pressure on himself? Who knows? We can all kind of speculate about that. But to then go and draw 0-0, Mr. David Hubert was in charge. He said he was quite shocked when he was asked to do it. It's just quite funny. It's like, well, who else do you think's going to get it? The man that was only playing a couple of years ago for Charleroi, I believe, wasn't it? Was he at Charleroi? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. He was knocking around one of those sort of clubs. Yours is giving me a funny look, and Scott's nodding, so we're going to have to look that one up. But I have a feeling he was at Charleroi or someone like that. But 0-0, goalkeepers looked like they performed quite well. I have to say, I had this game on in the background while I was doing something else, and I barely had to turn to it, which I think kind of sums it up.
Yeah, I think it's deja vu. That's all I can say about Anderlecht at the moment, actually, and it kind of describes the performance again. Same issues apparent. Not that anybody was expecting any significant change on that front on the basis of one game for David Hubert. Yeah, I mean, watching this game, one of the things that kind of struck me was Anderlecht leaving far too much space when they were out of possession. It's almost like, they kind of switch off a little bit when they lose possession and forget, hang on a minute, we've maybe got to work a wee bit harder here. Oh no, let's work a wee bit less now that we're out of possession. In fact, David Hubert actually remarked specifically on that. He said we were leaving too much space when we were out of possession, and it was really obvious. And actually that helped Charleroi kind of get into the game and get a foothold on a game in which they got a relatively hard-won point that Rick DeMille was really rather pleased about afterwards, which kind of says a lot, I think, about the progress that they've been making since he's been here. I suppose the good news is Koosmans was quite good again. He's one of the few that's been performing at a level that is perhaps acceptable. The goalkeeping metrics are very different. Obviously, it's a very specific position. But yeah, he's having a good time of sorts. The conflab in the dugout, interesting, because a lot of people were immediately on the conspiracy bandwagon as soon as that happened. But of course, Fredberg was right to point out that he has conversations like that all the time with players. What was unusual in this case was we don't normally see it publicly, and it's not normally quite as public as that was. I mean, they knew fine well the cameras were still around and switched on. So, the question is, was that deliberate? I mean, there was word that the dressing room was busy and there wasn't space inside the ground, but nobody's really buying that as an explanation either. So it was definitely deliberate, and probably some kind of smoke screen to get people talking about all sorts of other things other than perhaps the performance. Yeah, I mean, Brian's gone now. I feel sorry for him, actually. I might be one of the few that does. I think to a large extent he was hung out to dry in a way. He can only work with what he's got, and the reality was they had a really poor window, in truth. They painted quite a rosy picture of it being okay, but I don't think anybody really thinks it was that great a window. So he wasn't helped in that sense. Anders Dreyer isn't performing for whatever reason. Did he fall out of love with Brian Reimer? Who knows? Hazard's in a long-term injury. Dolberg's not performing at the same level. Verscharen's not doing it. There are big players there who last year were performing reasonably consistently and, keeping them in a strong position. They've all dropped off. the cliff, which left them even more exposed after a poor window as well. And of course, the coach will always carry the can. But Ben's right. I mean, the focus is now coming squarely onto Jesper's shoulders because they had a bad window. Have to make do with what they've got now. The strange thing for me is if you're going to sack him, the timing again is strange because it looked like it was imminent for a long time. The fan base had essentially withdrawn their support, hadn't they, guys? They'd made it pretty clear, we want a change, which is often the point where, the point of no return for anybody as a coach. I don't understand why they weren't in a position to bring in a replacement straight away. That tells me that they weren't necessarily ready to kind of do it. It just seems odd that you would expose yourself for what feels like now might be quite a few weeks when you could have somebody in who perhaps you felt was better placed to take you forward immediately. So I don't think this has been particularly planned for at all. I think there's been some quite hasty discussions and a snap decision made. They might have wanted to do it for a while, but maybe not had the balls to do it, and then it's happened at short notice, and it just looks to me from the outside that there's been no real planning in this, which doesn't help them at all.
I don't get why they didn't make the change. Well, if they really wanted to make it, which seems like at least that part seems to be like somewhere in the script of any manager, I guess, but this early in the season, why don't they do it in the summer after the good season? That would be, for everyone, probably be good. Even Riemer also for his own CV, like he parked him in a good spot. But okay, there's still... It would have been a tough decision, obviously, but I guess the results spoke for him at that point. But nonetheless, if you're not that convinced and the results are now finally turning a little bit, immediately going after him, there's obviously still some internal struggles there, either higher up at the Lotto Park. I'm not sure. Fedberg definitely. That was quite deliberate. Scott already mentioned it. That whole discussion after the Genk game. Yeah, he knows the cameras are there. Everyone knows the cameras are there. I think he was indeed trying to somehow separate himself a little bit from Riemer to not be sacked himself yet. He's anyway on a discussion, but the fans are now also aiming again at Van den Houten, and I understand why as well. But it's all like the whole situation at that club is still such a mess. And the relationship with the fans as well. With the fans for this season, it somehow makes sense if you look at it from the outside as well. At their home game specifically, they've won the first home game against Sint-Truiden in the final minutes, but that was a game without fans allowed. And since then, they haven't won any home games. So, I mean, they haven't. And not only that, I mean, I'm not gonna shove all the blame of Riemer, but they didn't see good football either. And that part, I guess he's definitely in some of his choices that he's made, definitely could have gone a bit better. Regardless of how high you value the squad, but you could still probably do better, play better football with what they have. Yeah, and again, I guess you really can't say you had a good window if you now see Zanka Jurgensen playing the last few games. That's the experience back, not back. Well, the experience option at the back. Yeah, I think they're all hoping Vertonghen is back very quickly and stays fit. That's I think one that Scott even didn't mention. So yes, they indeed also have quite some injuries, and I think Dreyer is actually also a bit of an injury cause or fatigue from last season and carrying over a little bit. Definitely, at the break this time they had an expected goals of 0.02. Again, in front of your home fans. That's not going to help your cause. Okay, this was already after Riemer got sacked. But definitely a lot of issues there. Hubert never has been playing at Charleroi. He's played at a lot of Belgian clubs, but more in the Flemish part of the country. except the Anderlecht one. So the last club he played for was Zulte Waregem before he moved to the Anderlecht Futures, of course, as well, to end his career. He only had, actually, it's already a weird choice that they went for him in the end. Like he was managing the under 18s, had one game that they played, lost that one big time, by the way. But okay, that's another topic that might not have to do with anything. But but they didn't go for either Jelle Koen or someone from the coaching staff, from Riemer's staff, still somewhere closer to the first squad. To move to be the pawn to take over at the moment, but okay, another probably political decision, and the politics there are at high stakes at the moment. The fan. It might be, okay, I'm not that close to it, but it might be that they actually need to have the real reshuffle again of the organization, but that will again cost them time, of course. But longer term, maybe that is a solution, but that's something we cannot say from here. Okay, to touch quickly on Charleroi as well, I guess they do deserve a mention. They've actually played quite well, especially in the first half. They could have won this game if they would have scored. Heijmans had a really good chance that Koosman saved, and it was their first draw of the season as well. I guess that's okay in this case, since Anderlecht has beaten them a lot of times in the last 25 years. And also just one moment in the game, the weird save of Kone after Dolberg stood on his foot, and then still, like, he was already like, oh, I should complain about this, but oh no, the ball comes, I'll have to save this one, and he managed. That was really good. That was a funny moment. And then one to turn back to Koolsmans and Anderlecht was more, is it really a good sign if your goalkeeper is the best man of the season, as if you want to be a top club? If you are a top club, like, you don't want to be, you are a top club in any league. Yeah, usually the answer tends to be no, I think. And I fear that's the case here as well.
Yeah, I think that highlights one of the issues, actually. Joris is dead right about that. You mentioned Vandenhout, actually. It's worth reminding everybody, I think. This is somebody who, I mean, the Anderlecht fans have many and varied opinions on Wouter Vandenhout's involvement in the club. What I wanted to remind everybody was, this is somebody who, while the heat was very hot on him not too long ago, became a non-executive director, was the official line, but it's quite clearly obvious, even from the outside, that this non-executive director is very executive still internally, arguably more so than ever before, I think, and it does explain kind of quite a few things. Also, when you look at their schedule, Anderlecht, this is coming up thick and fast now. European football's about to kick in. In their next 4 fixtures, they've got 2 European games. They've got Ferencvaros and Real Sociedad as well, in amongst a couple of home reasonably easy, shall we say, on paper domestic games, but they're not in a strong place to kind of be going into those fixtures at the moment, so they could be in a rather poor position come the end of the next international break if the appointment drags on, which it looks like it's going to.
Yeah, I'm not terribly optimistic about them against Ferencvaros, just from what you guys have said the whole time. And the funny thing about Koosmans is as well is that, like, he's not even the goalkeeper they probably thought they needed to start the season with, did they? No one thought he'd be the number one, and now he's their best player, which, it's not great. And you mentioned Zanka, and I still can't believe they signed him. It's just like, he was part of the Dusseldorf team that got relegated, and he wasn't great then, and that was like COVID season, so that was like 3 or 4 seasons ago. And then he went to Brentford. I was like, how has this man got these moves? Like, it pays to be Danish, guys. I think that's the thing. Like, if you're Danish, there's a job out there for you somewhere. And
well, I don't think anybody would be surprised if you haven't already seen some of the names being bandied about to replace Brian Reimer. There are some Danes on that list, so I mean, the pressure's on. But nobody was shocked to see that either.
I think that he's not allowed to hire a Dane, is he? I think everyone's feel like you can't. You just can't do it.
I think that's discrimination, but I guess yes, in theory, that would not be a smart choice, and I think he wouldn't be allowed. I'm actually not sure how much he actually still has has to say about it. But just one final fact as well, of course. I'll have to give credits to Hen van Haasbroek, our favorite columnists now. Like the Anderlecht is Anderlecht is conceding the second most shots against. So yeah, in the whole league, worse than Beerschot, for example. Yeah, that actually tells the whole story on that front, at least. And the problem is, of course, a little bit also, again, to bring it back to Riemer, he was supposed to be like that part of the tactics he's supposed to have gotten right, and then in attack he was supposed to have a bit more, well, he was a bit more clueless. But yeah, that if that part already was not at their best, yeah, okay, to give them more background there.
You mentioned Big Hein, actually. He made quite a few good points about Anderlecht this week when he was analysing them. As an ex-Anderlecht manager, of course, he didn't have the happiest times there himself. But one of the things he did say about them as well amongst his analysis that I thought was, yeah, he's spot on there, and nobody's really talking about that. He said, see, if you look at this squad, he says the resale value there is extremely poor, and that says that the sporting policy is honking, as I would say in my parts, and he's absolutely right about that. You know, for a club that, you know, have been working hard to try and redress the financial situation, they're not putting themselves in a strong situation when it comes to resales either.
No, and I think, I mean, we could probably keep talking about this for the whole entire episode, but I think it's nice to keep kind of to kind of dive in a little bit of this. And you think about the players that should be high resale value, like Marius Struycken should be one of the kind of top resale values. And then Amuzu was meant to be the one, wasn't he? He was meant to go for a load, but the injuries, the lack of kind of polished finishing and stuff, which may be down to the injuries and stuff. But when he came on, he does just bring that little bit of pace, that little bit of energy, that little bit of like life into their attack. And these guys they've signed aren't exactly like nobodies either. Like they have been or are meant to be good players and stuff like that. You just think with the managerial thing, maybe yeah, like while he's injured, why doesn't Jan Vertonghen just take it on? Like he's there, he may as well just kind of stand there. If Huber's one kind of under 18 one was a big defeat, no wonder he was surprised when they gave him the call. He's like, "What? You sure? Like, you want me in there?" I don't know. Maybe Hein's like analysis was part of his kind of application cover letter that he sent in for the role. Who knows? Maybe it was just kind of doubling up as the two. But yeah, I saw some people calling for Vincent Everard on the poll we did, which caused a bit of concern amongst other Anderlecht fans. We'll get to his club in a little while. Let's go next to Bruges against Ghent. Probably the game of the weekend. Although I have to say, guys, for this one, I was watching it up until the 39th minute, and then my wife's friends turned up. So I was like, I'll turn it off, and then I'll come back to it. I'll be polite. I'll say hello, like introduce her to the baby, all that sort of stuff. I then see the message coming through from Scott saying this is a really weird game, and I was like, oh, what's weird about a 0-0 game that club have basically dominated and haven't scored? But yeah, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, it's 3-0 to Ghent. That was it. Lovely finish from Max Dean. Lovely turn of finish from Max Dean. Celebration to match. Getting absolutely pelted by beer, I think it was, from the fans, which I feel like he probably quite enjoyed. I feel like he's that sort of character for what we know about him. This is like right up his street. Club had so many chances, but Davy Roof was Davy Roof and made a load of saves. Again, didn't defend that well, to be honest, but just club couldn't take their chances. But I guess the main question is, I know we've got quite a few Chelsea fans that listen, and guys, do you think Chelsea should be absolutely terrified of Henri Gandelman? I feel like he's just going to tear them apart in the European football coming up, because the man looks like he should be a defender, but he plays as a central attacking midfielder and just scores goals for fun. He's the weirdest footballer, and it's so funny, isn't it? Because the whole story around him joining the club was like, oh, this is Heinz signing, like the scouting department hasn't been involved in it, so it's probably a rubbish signing. But of all their signings in recent years, it's probably been their best one, despite them not actually scouting him. So who needs football scouts? Like, get rid of the scouting department and just sign players on a whim. It clearly works.
Do you know, this was a wild game, you know, as Ben was saying, like genuinely wild. I mean, so much so that it slightly defies any real rational analysis in a way. Really perplexing stuff. Now, we talk a lot about efficiency. It's probably the word we use more than anything else here at the BFB. Coaches use it a lot as well. You'll hear them using it. I mean, as far as efficiency goes, I suppose this game is a lesson in efficiency, like triple red underlined. Just, I mean, the first first half hour, Ghent were really disappointing. Sat off Club Brugge, doing nothing, leaving too much space, just not playing well at all. And then boom, out of nowhere, they take the lead. Slight lapse of concentration probably in Club's part to allow Max Dean to time his run and to get in the way that he did. They go 1-0 up completely against the run of play, it has to be said, which does happen. And then it gets wilder because they get a second goal before half time that's extremely fortunate and comical. They go in 2-0 up at half time again, and you're thinking, I would love to be a fly in the wall on both of these team talks, because before the first goal, both of these team talks are going to be very, very different to the way that they worked out. And in the second half, it continues in the same vein. We get 3 goals in kind of quick succession. Club are 3-0 down before they've even kind of broken any sweat in the second half. It was a really strange game, and Nicky Hines' face, you could tell he wasn't quite sure what to make of what was unfolding in front of him. I think we can say, when you look at the Ghent goals from a club's perspective, there are some minor positioning issues, but I think it's more lapses in concentration, people just switching off more than anything else. And I came away from it thinking, how did Ghent really manage to win that game in a way? Because if you hadn't seen it and you'd gone and looked at some of the stats, you'd go, this is just odd. And it felt really odd watching it. And even now, having, had a look at, a lot of the goals, a lot of the replays again, looking at some of the stats and numbers, that's what I mean. It slightly defies a lot of rational analysis. Club are very disappointed because for the most part, they played quite well, but, lapses in concentration kind of kill you at any level. And ordinarily, Ghent wouldn't win this game in a million years when you look at their output on it. So it's kind of strange. You can't criticise their efficiency ultimately, but how efficient actually were they in terms of what they did? I don't think we'll see a game as odd as this for a while.
Yep, 4 goals with 3 shots on target across the whole game. That's basically sums it up on the offensive side from Ghent, definitely. And then indeed, like the way some of the goals went in, definitely, like it's a bit down to Club Brugge's defending at times. It was not always great. That's the part they can criticize themselves for. But otherwise, we often say like, oh, this game should have been 3-0 after 15 minutes and over. Often it's a bit of an exaggeration, but in this case, it perfectly would have made sense, and somehow it didn't happen. Must be a very frustrating game for Club Brugge fan to watch. But yeah, for Club Brugge, a very frustrating week. Not only evening, of course, conceding 7 at home. Not actually twice playing quite well. Okay, against Dortmund, you can still lose even with playing quite well, but yeah, that it really still became a 0-3. Yeah, that's a tough one, a tough pill to swallow. But yeah, 27 in this game, 27 shots, 9 on target, output of 2. It's just not enough, I guess. It's actually all right, but yeah, then your defense needs to be on point, and yeah, it clearly wasn't. The whole culmination of things going wrong in that game. Max Dean scoring his first goal for Ghent in the league. At least he scored in Europe already, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the qualifiers. 2 men to name. You already named them, but Roof with 7 saves, and Gandelman again on doing it for Ghent. Mind-blowing game, I guess. Frankel also was honest in the interview. He was actually not happy with how everything went, but yeah, well, he'll take it. I'm sure he will.
I mean, it's a classic Rankin game, isn't it? Like, just goals and lack of defending. That's like how he made his name at Mechelen.
He'll be hoping for more of the same when he goes to Stamford Bridge.
Oh yeah, can't wait for that one. I'll actually be there, but I'll be in the Chelsea end. So if people do see me, don't out me. leave me in peace.
Yeah, Ben's making it very interesting for himself, experiencing some European action in amongst the home support. We like to try and keep it real here. When me and Ben were in Kilmarnock a few weeks ago watching Circle, of course we were up in the press gallery with the rest of the press, but all of the while up there, we were looking across at the Circle support going, really, we would like to be in amongst that. But, but Ben's actually, in this case, getting to do the same equivalent here. So, yeah.
The opposite of it, then, though.
Yeah,
the exact opposite. But also, okay. I think I'll try to test some video for this podcast again, just to show everyone Ben's face a bit more clearly, so it's in memory for pointing it out. The traitor.
I mean, the last time I went to Stamford Bridge was actually to watch my own team, Reading, play, and I was in the Chelsea end again, and we scored a last-minute equaliser, and I've never struggled more to not leap off my seat to celebrate. I think it was a Michael Essien own goal, or actually someone scored the most hilarious own goal that I've ever seen in a football game, and it was just Chelsea fans were fighting around me, and I was having a great Boxing Day. So hopefully more of the same. I'll try not to celebrate the Henri Gandelman hat-trick. We'll see how we get on. Let's go to Franken's old side in Mechelen, who faced Cercle of Bruges. Another defeat for Cercle. Yeah, it's a frustrating kind of time for them, isn't it? In terms of the performances haven't been great either. In this one, I didn't think Mechelen were excellent, but they were definitely, in my opinion, they looked more cohesive. They looked like they had a better idea of what they wanted to do. Their kind of key players stepped up when they needed them to score the goals. Either end of that one from Fulan, who he really did have to sacrifice his body to get that one, didn't he? I haven't seen anything about the injury, but that would be a bit of a blow if he's out for a while, because he's been fantastic for them since joining. And then Van den Eyden scoring as well. Varlason became kind of public enemy number one in Mechelen. I feel bad because there was someone with a sign asking for Fulan's shirt, but I don't think he was in any fit state to hand his shirt out to kids at the side of the pitch after that one. But yeah, Joris, you mentioned earlier kind of Cercle having enough quality to get out of it, and they clearly do, but it's how long do you wait until that quality comes to the fore? What does Milan have to do to kind of get that quality out of them? What's the shift that he needs to make? Because Kaku started at the back and he looked okay. He didn't look like he was completely out of place at the level, but then there was a couple of kind of incidents where you could see the kind of immaturity there. Midfield wasn't as kind of dominant and strong as it normally can be, and kind of the physicality wasn't as high as you kind of expect. So it's definitely frustrating. I think the new guys haven't hit the ground running, have they yet? And I think that kind of needs to happen soon. One of them needs to kind of take it on the hill, because last season we had Alan Minder kind of come in and then he hit the ground running quite quickly, and that kind of spurred them on. And we haven't had that from the likes of Nunes, Benigno, or some of the other guys yet. So the quality's there, but it does need to happen soon. Whereas for Mechelen, it felt like kind of a routine 2-0 home win.
Well, Besnik Hazi's never lost to Cercle, either as Mechelen manager or at his time at Anderlecht. So, he has a very good record against them. Mechelen's game plan, classic Mechelen, get the ball out wide, stretch the pitch to find the space, and also that helped them, I think, a lot with preventing Cercle's press coming into play too much. Cercle had a really poor first half. They were much better in the second half. Not enough for them. I think Miran was just keen to point out afterwards that again it's a very young squad, which it is, and that they need time. Me and Joris were talking about this in a fair amount of detail last week, about a lot of issues, a lot of negative issues, kind of coming right to the forefront at the same time for Miran Muslic. And it was interesting because he gave a really good press conference ahead of this game where he was really frank and honest about both some of the things he'd said in the media that maybe he hadn't handled too well, and how he needed to be a bit more measured and not allow his emotions to get the better of him, which I think highlights obviously the increase in pressure that is inevitably there as well. But he did say that he felt that adjustments were needed and not changes, which is why I found it fascinating that there were some changes in the starting lineup. So changes did come. So that's slightly kind of contradictory and interesting as well. My feeling about it is, and Ben's raised the optimum question here, it's not working at the moment. I think we all know why. How long do you give it? I think Miro Muslic will be given a bit longer because so many players have come in, because some of the more established players there who've been there for a bit longer have dropped off a bit. I mean, the most obvious one, Kevin Denke, who top scorer last season, scoring for fun last season, just hasn't really turned up at all this season. A lot of that is to do with the on-off moves, which didn't happen in the end. Miron was very honest this week, actually, and he said he had a really good conversation with him during the week where a lot of the air was cleared, I think. He said he felt he was in a better place to kind of go on now and just concentrate on his football, which is going to be really, really important because there are no signs at the moment that anybody else in that squad is going to step in and score anything like what Kevin can do, which in itself obviously is part of a problem. And the young players do. He's right. I don't feel it's an excuse in any level at all. Watching them when they play, I don't think they're necessarily used to the system and the demands of the system yet. So it is going to take time. I think the fact that they've been so good for so long is what is going to give Miron Muslic more time, because he does deserve that more time. The added complication obviously is the European football, which is getting thrown in there. You know, the schedule's getting very tight. They've got Ghent at home, St Truden at home, St Gallen come calling in the Conference League, and they've got Antwerp as well. So I think the problems, I feel, having watched them this weekend, as we do every weekend, I don't feel any steps forward in improvements yet. And in a way, that would be the most worrying thing.
Crucial next 5 days, I think, for Muslic, actually, already. The home game against Ghent. Ghent playing probably stayed in Bruges for the week. Yeah, it's not that far anyway, but they might as well, since they played at the Ambrelle twice in quick succession now. But okay, enough about them. But yeah, then that game, I guess you want a good performance there. Ideally, in the situation they're in, also some points. But then the big one, of course, against Sint-Truiden. If they get something there, things look a lot more bright. At least if they really win. If it's a draw, might buy them some more time anyway, depending on other results. If they lose that one, things are starting to look really dire. So yeah, that in the league, so that will probably make people think, inside the club as well. But I think it's more about the performances, maybe. But definitely after that as well, indeed, you mentioned that European game against, and then away to Basel. Yeah, you don't really see many points there necessarily. Maybe I'm already at the point now that maybe Europe in the end could be a blessing if they can get some results there, and then that pulls them out of the mud. But hopefully for them it's already a bit earlier because of the fixtures in front of that. Second half performance of them was indeed a bit better. Offensively, maybe still not enough, but they created a few things which was in the first half completely absent. They lose their third game in a row, fourth game if you count Europe as well. And no, they don't have any away wins this season yet. So that's worrying. But luckily for him, they now have actually 3 home games in a row. So maybe they can use that to their advantage in this case. Yeah, for Mechelen, first time in 5 years, they beat Mechelen. They beat Cercle Brugge from playing achter de kazerne. 3 wins out of the last 4 as well, much needed. They actually needed this win as well. They were already dropping down the tables before, but everything is so tight still. But now they put themselves in a bit of a better position. I was talking about Anderlecht conceding the second most chances in the whole league. Mechelen actually are conceding the most, so that's a bit worrying for them still. Yeah, Touba and Raman getting their first starts, both getting their first starts of the season. And of course, indeed, Foulon scoring and actually just not remembering that he did that. But it seems to be that it was just a heavy concussion. As far as I could at last I've heard, is uncertain for the next game next weekend. But after that, most likely will be fine, and we'll see about things. I think things might change there as well, I guess, for next weekend, which is a game against Genk, which is a good segue.
Oh, I love it when you set up a segue. It always helps me out so much. Yeah, let's go to Genk, which maybe we should call it like the Brian Hayden game. 300 appearances for Genk senior side for Brian Hayden. Just incredible achievement from someone of that kind of standard of play. I guess you could say that is still at the same club that he came through from the youth system into the first team, now the captain, 27 years old. You're just not going to see many kind of Brian Hayden and many players in Belgium that can stick 300 Pro League appearances in, winning titles and winning cups and stuff like that. So remarkable achievement. I think I love that Fink did bring him off near the end. You can see he was given probably the biggest clap as well. He was really going for that clap, wasn't he, at the end there? But it was nice. The tifo is fantastic as well. I thought from the Genk fans, I thought that was really, really special. The boys put in a performance as well, worthy of the game. But nice if it ended 3-0 though, just to kind of like 303 and all that sort of stuff. But O decided that he'd come on and just absolutely leather the ball. Plus De Vriend, Dender's third keeper to be in between the sticks. Krzyzewski scoring with his first touch. There's so much that happened in this game on a Genk side. I think I'll let Joris talk about that. I'll just have a quick word on Dender, who, I'm actually starting to get a little bit concerned about, because I feel like, the loss to standard was kind of like, like maybe this is actually what their level is. Maybe like they had that great thing. International break comes at the complete worst time. They lose that game. Then this one, I feel like, they need to bounce back. They got Anderlecht next week. That they kind of need to get a point or a win out of there just to kind of ensure they keep the confidence going, because I feel like they just felt like one of those teams, didn't they, guys, that just, if things start to go south, they could go south and they could go south for the rest of the season. Like they really are going to have to punch above their weight every single game. This game, obviously, I feel like the form Genk are in terms of going forward and stuff like that, they're clicking, and not the best team to play in that sense. And on Haynen's kind of 300th thing, someone had to be the whipping boys, and they unfortunately it was them. But slightly concerned for them, and I feel like this is the kind of, they're going to regress to kind of being in that bottom four eventually, and then we'll see what they're made of. But Joris, let's talk about Genk. Let's talk about Brian Hayden as well, because we can't ignore 300 Genk appearances. It's just remarkable achievement from a very, very good player.
Yeah, and that's 300 games, still only 27 after having 2 ACL injuries as well. So it could have been 400 probably if not, or close to that probably, that if that would not have happened. So but also really, like, he played one season at Opwieter. I'll mention them. One season when he was 5, and after that it's all Genk. So it's really from 21 years already that he's playing for Genk. So that's really remarkable. I'm really happy that he's still with the club as well. Of course, I'm also a little sidebar, maybe not really the right place to it. I'm not sure if he would benefit from taking another move to a foreign country. I'm not sure if that is the level. I feel like it's a bit of a Van Aken case, that maybe it's actually good that he stays. Partially maybe as well because of these injuries that will have hampered him a bit. But, he hasn't lost a game. He's actually won all of games this season that he came in against Club Brugge. And that's when the turnaround happened. And since then, they have won 6 games in a row. So, that's just highlighting maybe for this season only already how important he can be for the squad, even if he's not necessarily contributing in numbers yet. But, the highest nice thing to mention, I guess, is mainly the tifo, which was really, really great tifo. They tend to do that quite well at my club. I'm happy with that as well. There can be different things said about the fans, but they do know how to make a tifo. And I'm happy with that. 21 years, 300 games, third most games for Genk. And actually, if he stays for a bit longer, he will break that record easily. Still would need 3 seasons or so. But if he would stay, I would understand if he doesn't want to and actually wants to take that leap at some point. But I'm not sure. Maybe that momentum actually already has passed. Good player to have in your side and having it there. Other things on Genk, yes, Mets missing his first game on the since he has had Fink as a manager, and actually before that as well, I believe it was 58 games, I believe, in a row. But yeah, he had some stomach issues, let's put it that way, days before the game. So I think in the end, ultimately, he wanted to play. He was fit, but since Cuesta was still there and he's a valuable option as well at the back, he Fink chose to put him. And yeah, what a difference actually! Under Fink, 2 months ago, I was also, or not even 2 months ago, against the game against Club Brugge was really needed to get a result there, to save his ass, maybe not literally yet, but not put him under a lot of pressure. But it seems like that game, the second half of that game, really has given the whole club a boost. 2 clean sheets in a row. I've been talking about the clean sheets for a while. I've been talking about not getting bigger wins as well. Two times in a week now against Anderlecht, already 2-0 to two difference, now 4 difference. Yeah, I mean, things are looking bright. The only way is up, you would say. But okay, actually, if you look realistically, that's actually the opposite that you could say there. But I'm happy with what I'm seeing at the moment. At least seems like the players are enjoying themselves. Changes have been made. Bonsuba came in for Sor this time against Ender. Took his spot in starting 11 and then looked a different player as well. I mean, not everything is working out, but it's looking more tactically disciplined and making smarter choices, not always going for the own dribble, which he can do really well, but it's a bit predictable if he always goes for that. But it seems like he added that layer to pass the ball at the right times as well, and still at some times, of course, get the action. And he got rewarded with his first goal of the season as well. Really, so many things to say. Still, I will try to keep it short for the rest, I guess. But I'm failing at that. I also just want to highlight Heine's midfield partner in this game, Sadelberger, who is for me the best, probably the best purchase they did this season. Genk, that is not a no league. That's too early, and I don't have the complete overview yet. But for Genk, they really impressive vision, and then they just control. He's always in control and scanning in when he has the ball. If he doesn't have the ball, he knows what he's doing clearly, and has a good passing. For at least for the fitting the style that Genk plays, and maybe a player that Genk needed as well. There's a lot more footballing power, footballing feet from behind, I guess, as well. Also with Smets, this game he didn't feature, of course, but he can play the ball a bit quicker up front, bringing the ball a bit quicker up front. The same goes with Sattelberger. It accelerated the pace of the game. And the main thing of the whole Genk squad is then maybe just I don't see any complete real top player that will make the difference. So I'm not sure longer term in the whole season if it will be if that will be the weak point deciding on getting a prize or not. But there's a lot of players that are completely different, have completely different styles. So there's a lot of room to like now playing Bonsuba instead of Sor. You still have these options on the bench. At least they're completely different types. Whether they're completely the top level, that's in the longer run, that's another topic. But there are options, and Fink is using them. His changes have been remarkably going well the whole season already. Like Ben mentioned, Rozovsky scoring with his first touch this time. Zadelberger actually has done it with his second touch not that long ago. In this goal, actually, the 3 players had gotten on win it before the goal, and it was that were Sor, who assisted to O, whose shot was blocked, that fell to Rozovsky. So all 3 of them were involved at that goal, which is quite remarkable in its own right. Just really pleased. Also, the game. This one was a bit of a routine win. Arokadare, I've said harsh words on him, and I'm still not completely convinced, but he is performing really well. Even if he scores or not, the game against Anderlecht was probably even his best game, and he didn't score in that one. But in the performance against Anderlecht, I just want to mention that one as well, because it was just they really played him off the park. That doesn't happen so often. Even though, again, efficiency, the word we still need to use. Apart from the Dender game, it's still not completely there, but that's on its own maybe still a good sign.
Yeah, well, I can't add too much to Joris's analysis. I think he's covered everything there. The big thing for me is not conceding in the last two. So they're starting to click at both ends.
Yep, and on Dender then, to forget to mention them as well. I have the same fears as Ben. Two losses in a row now. How will they cope with that? Yeah, that they will see next couple of weeks. Can they bounce back? And of course, yes, De Vriend, third goalkeeper, and also his debut in goal. Even though he conceded 4, there was not much he could do about it. So yeah, an okay game for him, but it was a surprising choice nonetheless from Evra.
Yeah, I think if he'd tried to get a hand on that 0-1, it'd have fallen off. So probably for the best he didn't. Spoke about efficiency though. Spoke about scoring goals. One side that aren't efficient and just can't seem to put their chances away. Leuven. I don't know how they didn't win this game. They had so many chances. Maybe it's because they don't have a striker, or they're not playing the striker. I don't know. But yeah, they just couldn't score, and the Kortrijk goal basically kind of summed up how Kortrijk were going to score in this game, like the massive deflection past Leeson into the back of the net. The goal they did score, Leuven, was good, and I think Joris's favourite has been probably their best player of the season in Beerschot. He really does boss them out in that midfield. Nice assist for Conan and Dree. Like he's actually playing quite well, and he seems to have been quite a good signing, despite me not really thinking they actually needed someone in there to do that. But he has been pretty decent. But the main news, I guess, coming out of Kortrijk, which is hilariously bizarre, and someone's lying, but we don't know who. But basically, the report comes out today as a recording, so Tuesday the 24th. At Newsblad, who are usually pretty reliable. Like if they say something, it's because they've actually looked into it, done the research and stuff, and they come out and say, Frederik Andersen last week spent 2 days in Wales speaking to Cardiff City. Seems plausible. They need a new head coach. Vincent Tan owns both clubs. Frederik Andersen's a very good coach, despite Cardiff fans all saying today when the news came out, like, cheap option, rubbish, blah, blah, blah. I was like, actually, if you look into his body of work last season and the situation your club's in, he's probably what you need, because you've been pretty terrible this season, let's face it. So that comes out. And then a couple of hours later, Kortrijk released a statement that Frere was never in Wales. That never happened. Not he's speaking to Cardiff at all. And it's definitely not happening. But someone saw him at the airport, so he was definitely going somewhere, unless it was a massive lookalike and someone's just got their wires twisted. But yeah, it's all a bit bizarre. But at the end of the day, it looks like he's staying in Kortrijk, which I'm kind of struggling, guy, because like last season, if you told me that, I'd be like, yeah, no, he's exactly what they need. He's the right manager. He's definitely what they need. But the way they've started this season is nowhere near the level that they were playing at last season. Like it's nowhere near kind of the passion and the energy. Not passion is probably the one word, but the energy and kind of the like willingness to do everything to win, and like the little bit of quality that they had in certain situations last season. It just doesn't seem to be there. Like they were really poor in this game, I thought, against Leuven. They cut like their kind of chances that they did create. They weren't like really clear, and Leuven kind of cut them open a couple of times, but they just couldn't score. Like it could have easily been like a 3-1, 4-1 if Leuven could finish their chances and stuff like that. And yeah, Kortrijk have been very inconsistent, and I'm like, is that who's to blame for that? I guess is it the players? Is it the head coach? Like we really did praise him, but are we over praising him now by saying like he's the key thing, they need him to stay? Like, is it massively important that he stays or not? Because at the end of the day, it hasn't had the bounce we thought it was going to have to start this season. And there's still time for that to happen and stuff, but it's just really strange, isn't it? Kind of like the disconnect between how they finished the season, how they've started the season. It's like, it's completely different. And we all presumed that they'd have the summer they've got the players in that they'd really kick on and they'd be as good as they were at the back end of last season, but they haven't been, and that's like the brutal truth. Whereas for Leuven, it's just they're kind of the same, aren't they? They just can't score, but they're quite entertaining to watch.
Well, I think the disappointing thing, or perhaps the most disappointing thing from a Kortrijk perspective, is this slight controversy over where Freyr Alexandersson was or wasn't during that 2-day spell has now got us to a situation where I think some of the fans, have already made up their own mind that regardless of whether he's staying or not, they really don't like what they've heard over the last few days, and that's led to some of them kind of starting to turn, is the phrase I'll use, which is never a helpful or a positive thing. Freyr Alexandersson said something really interesting. I think it was in pre-season. I think he was talking about the end of last season and saying that it's really important this season that the players perform at a competent level. So the basics just have to be there. You might not be playing well, you might not be getting results, but the absolute minimum of competency levels for a professional footballer on all levels, work rate, technical ability, all of the things that you're looking for, no matter who you are, what club you're at, have to meet a minimum standard. And for a lot of the end of last season, obviously they didn't, which, as we know, explained the situation that he was able ultimately to get them out of. There is a feeling that the mistakes are starting to creep in a bit more again for whatever reason. And he did say actually post-match, Freyr Alexandersson, that he was really disappointed with how quickly they conceded and the manner in which they did as well after taking the lead somewhat against the run of play, it has to be said. Leuven were the better side, did have really all the chances and just couldn't kill the game. I think Birger Verstraete was very frustrated. He had a very decent game actually. He said, look, we should have won this game. It's kind of annoying that we didn't. Akamoto was very good as well, by the way. Well, we're just kind of, I'm on Leuven. I thought he had a very decent game. In terms of decent games, Dion Deneuve had a decent game for Kortrijk, a player who very often flatters to deceive, gets into very good positions a lot of the time, but his final product is almost non-existent. I thought he did have some output for a change this weekend. Long may that continue. But yeah, I think the whole where was Freya? Never mind where's Wally, where's Freyr, is probably going to linger on for kind of longer than Kortrijk would like. The questions will keep being asked about that. I think it's one of those things that whether things pick up for them or don't pick up, that won't be forgotten.
Such a strange situation. They could have handled this. However, whatever there was, they could have handled this more discreetly or better, or depending on what the situation actually was. Although I think we can assume he probably was in talks at some point, but that's just an assumption. I'll leave it at that. But, just strange how everyone has handled that situation. Leuven, first time since their return to the Pro League that they are unbeaten in their first 4 home games. Sounds a bit like a stat that is just a stat, and it is what it is. But at least it's a positive one for them. Even though they still seem to struggle with winning games, it looked a bit better at the beginning of the season, but that seems to have fallen off a little bit. In this game, inefficient, of course, and obviously a bit unlucky with the goal they actually conceded as well. But not only just inefficient in scoring, but also just only 2 shots on target on the whole game, which is as much as Kortrijk, who were way the lesser sides across the most parts of the game. So that's a worrying thing for them again. For Kortrijk, I guess a useful point or a bit, even though they're still struggling at the bottom because of it. But since how the game panned out, also still continuing that weird streak of losing a game and then picking up a point in the next game, so at least 1 point. So at least they're never so far haven't gone really off the boil or haven't lost more than 1 game in a row. But the level of play is indeed not as high as hoped, and especially in attack, they seem to be struggling a lot again, same as last season. defense, it seemed to be sorted a bit better, but this season it's a bit hit and miss at times. And just really struggling going forward. I'm not sure if they made the right choices there in the end. But so far, I mean, they're still in a way better position than last season, but that's also because other sides are underperforming as well, and one side is just completely not performing, and I think we probably can write Beerschot already down as relegators, but it's not even a hot take anymore to say that. So that's the luck they have, I guess, and there's time to turn it around still, even with the same manager. I'm not screaming for that he needs to leave or anything either, but they will be hoping for a little more in the next few games anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I'm not saying he should leave or anything like that for sure. Like, completely agree. But it's kind of like, it's just an interesting kind of observation. And I think another one, you kind of picked up on it there, both of you actually, in terms of like the attacking output of that. And I think I came into the season thinking the way Thierry Ambrose finished the season, I was like, he looks like he could probably have like 10 goals in him this season, which is kind of the best he's ever had. He's never had that sort of season in Belgium, but he's been like way off it. Like, he just doesn't look comfortable in the system at all. And Ferry, I don't really get Ferry. I don't know why he's playing constantly, and I presume it's probably something in the loan clause where they have to play him a certain amount of times, because he scored that one goal against, was it Dender he scored against, I think it was, and then he's just non-existent for me. I don't really see it. I think it's always difficult if you're relying on a teenage lone striker. I just don't feel like that always. I think the striker position especially, I feel like it's quite difficult. I feel like, I don't know, is this, are they now, do they need Avenatti back? Do they need him there to kind of be the foil for Ambrose? I know that's a hot take. That's a really hot take. But again, you're looking into the squad and you're like, well, who else could kind of play that role? I think Ambrose, I don't think he can play up front of his own. He does need someone next to him. But like, El Idrissi came on and I was like, well, he didn't do anything last year. I don't think he's going to really do anything this year. They've obviously got, the Croatian lad, Rocco Simic, Cardiff Loney. They did well with the Cardiff Loney last year, but time will tell. Maybe he's going to be the one that overtakes Ferry or maybe even Ambrose. But that's kind of an area where I think Ferry will be slightly concerned, is that the striker he probably thought was going to score the goals isn't scoring the goals, and he's kind of having to play this guy on loan who doesn't look like he's quite the level that they need someone. But then you can look across the other side of the pitch and see that, Leuven can still create and kind of look decent going forward. They just can't score. So that is that. Quickly to the Challenger, because, our Anderlecht talk kind of took up a lot of time. So we'll quickly jump to the Challenger, Scott, and have a little discussion on that. And then, we'll tackle European football next week once we've got more of the results in.
We've reached Matchday 5 in the Challenger Pro League. Score roundup this weekend. Lommel beat Anderlecht Futures 2-1. Beveren Sarang finished goalless. Liers beat Eupen 3-0. Young Genk were beaten pretty convincingly by Molenbeek. Molenbeek scoring 3 there. Patro Eisden winning convincingly against Frank Moran 4-1. They were very good. I saw a little bit of them this weekend. Patro Eisden, that is. Zulte Waregem beating RFC Liège 3-1. Denza winning 2-0 against Club Next, and Raal, who are going good guns, beating Lokeren in the meeting of the two newly promoted sides, 2-0. So that means that Molenbeek are top on goal difference, just ahead of Raal. Lokeren remain bottom and winless. They're not the only side that's still winless, of course. Sarang, RFC Liège and Anderlecht Futures still looking for their first wins. Top scorer now is Patro Eisden's Kianov and Raffelhem. He's having a good season. Can't stop scoring at the moment, which is good to see in a young player. Me and Joris last week were talking about a couple of young players who can't stop scoring and doing very well. That's another one at it, raising the game. And a shout out while we're on the Challenger to somebody in the twilight of his career, 35-year-old Neil Shooterden, who has been around former Leuven, St Truden, Eupen, Westerlo, Mechelen and Lierse midfielder, of course, who's actually playing quite well for Serang. Nobody's talking about this because he's at Serang. That's got a lot to do with it. But yeah, his performances actually are going quietly under the radar, I've noticed, looking at some of his numbers. He's improving week on week. And for a player, as I was saying, 35 in his twilight, that's worthy of a little shout, I think.
Did you see the news that another man he's in the twilight of his career, but I don't think he's accepted that he's in the twilight of his career, has been sent to Club Next to train because no one wants him and he's just been shafted there. But I don't think he's even going to play for Club Next, is he? That is Dedrick Boyata. The forgotten man.
Celtic legend, obviously.
Celtic
But I at the same time I also want to. I'll let Scott comment on that in a second. But I just want to give a shout out to Mohamed Guindo for his fantastic goal, back heel lob, and putting Ladouvière with that goal. Also still as a joint top of the table still.
Yeah, that's one of the cheekiest goals you'll see in a long time, and he absolutely meant it as well. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I was actually on Boyata. I was asked about Dedrick Boyata's situation in great detail recently when I did a guest slot on a Celtic State of Mind podcast, which is a very, very big Celtic fan podcast. I was asked about whether he's likely to travel with the club squad when club come to Glasgow at the end of November to play Celtic, and I was reassuring them that he absolutely will not be in that squad, and as Ben was saying, he's highly unlikely ever to get any game time for Club Next, even though he's now been sent to train with them and impart the wisdom of his career to some of those youngsters there.
He just needs to find a Danish ancestor somewhere and then he can go sign for Anderlecht, because he's in the age bracket of the Zanka, isn't he? So he could go and do that. Just lastly, before we leave the Challenger and this podcast, people that probably know Scouted, they're pretty good at writing reports and stuff on players. They've just dropped one a couple of weeks ago on Papa Diop from Waregem, the young Senegalese midfielder who obviously he scored this weekend. Can't actually Jelle Vossen and then Papa Diop. It's like two players at complete opposite ends of their careers scoring for Waregem. But I think I predicted Diop to be kind of like a breakout player last season, but he didn't really quite get the game time. But it looks like he's really doing it this season. So definitely check out that from Scouted. It's nice to see that they're also taking an interest in the Challenger Pro League like we are. But yeah, it's looking good. It's been entertaining. I watched a little bit of the Beveren game this weekend, and yeah, it's always fun on the Challenger because it's just so chaotic and there's so many different storylines and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll get to that again next week for sure. But I think that's pretty much it. I hope it's probably pretty much it. Probably should be pretty much it. We've droned on for long enough. People are probably sick of the noise. Guys, it's been great to be back. It's been great to spend the evening with you.
It's been fabulous to have the full trident back, and good luck to the Brussels 2 in European action over the coming days. That's Anderlecht and Union Saint-Gilloise. More on that next week.
We really have really advanced AI now, so that's good. Good to know. Good job, Ben Bot. But good to have you back.
We'll be full AI very, very soon. That pretty much does it for this episode. Look out, Scott will be joining a Chelsea podcast soon as well to talk about Ghent. So keep your ears peeled and eyes peeled, I guess, for that one, if possible. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you like what we do, not what you do, if you like what we do, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you like it that much, you can also donate a coffee to us at Donate Me a Coffee. All the links are on our socials as well. You also just reminded me about the Fantasy Football League. I know that I'm doing terribly. Also, in a hilarious kind of switch, I set up a team, obviously, for us as a podcast collective, but I now can't get back into that team for some reason. So our podcast team is stuck with, is it Ilakina? I think Ilakina's still there in the podcast team. But at the moment, Steve Bruton is, smashing at the top. Tim Van Bavel, Tornado Tim, love that name, is second. Then Hamid Munda with the ex-combatants is third, but it's pretty tight between third and fourth. There's only a point in it between Jean-Sebastien Leclerc's side, so that's going pretty well. Belgian Football Podcast, our collective team is 17th, which isn't bottom, so somehow we're doing pretty well. My own team, I can't actually remember where my team is, but I think we might. It looks like I'm even lower than that, so that's pretty embarrassing, isn't it? But I'm like, 21st, having a mare, need to change that. But I've been away, so it's fine. But keep up with the fantasy. It is a good fun. We got a decent league going this week. Some of you are definitely keeping up with it a lot better than I am, but that's just how it is. But thanks as always for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.